what is the latest stuff happening in artificial intelligence and Chat AI particularly? It is making a big difference in the genealogy world, and I have two guys here that know a whole lot about it. So we're going to tell you about the latest, greatest things you've got to know. Thank you so much for being here. We have Steve Little here in the middle and Mark Thompson on the other side. They have started relatively recently a new podcast. Tell us about it.
The podcast is called the FamilyHistory AI Show Podcast.
And how long have you guys been doing it now?
Since May or June. I think we just finished episode 24.
Oh, that's great. And I know sometimes I've listened to it, and I'll be honest with you. Sometimes you guys are talking about stuff, and it's like way over my head. But then other times, not so much. But I love the fact that you guys are so in tune with what is happening right now and how we can apply it to genealogy to make things better and help us find our family. So today we're going to talk a lot about what are the latest things that are happening and how they're going to affect you and how it's going to help you discover your ancestors. So let's start maybe with what's some of the latest stuff that you guys are really excited about?
Probably the biggest news, the latest stuff, and this isn't where a beginner might get started, but the stuff that's got folks excited who've been using these tools for about 2 years is starting to use these tools for research. For the first 2 years, that was something we would slap people on the wrist for and say, not yet,
we
not
talked
yet.
about that.
Yes. Because these tools are not perfect. They return information that may or may not correspond with reality.
Yeah.
And so for these first 2 years, we said, do things other than research, do analysis. But in the past couple months, research has become a viable option if you're very, very careful.
So let's talk a little bit more about that then. How do you do that? How do you use this in order to research? Gosh, that's going to explode.
A place folks might want to get started doing this is a service called Perplexity. And I'm going to let Mark introduce that and then tell you what new has happened, because Mark's been a fan of Perplexity for a year and a half, almost 2 years now.
All right, let's hear it, Mark.
Yeah, I've been railing against it. Don't use it for research since day one, and there was a long while there I was kind of, running into the tide, hoping I could hold back the water, but the technology has finally caught up. There was a long time where it was very dangerous to do research, and people would ask questions. They would get these crazy things called hallucinations.
Yes.
Things didn't make sense.
Yes,
but people are so ingrained in the Google that people were upset with how bad these tools were at it. So the companies have put a ton of work into making even just the basic capabilities better for finding information that's been found in their training data. But just in the last 6 months, even, I've got to say, and this is where it was so much fun getting ready for RootsTech this year, literally in the last 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks, there's been new tools that have been added there. They now actually have the ability, about 3/4 of them, they can go out and look across the internet, retrieve information from the internet that you've queried, and then it gets merged together inside the chatbot in something that can look conspicuously like a very well-made research report. But just like all chatbots, in fact, even just like all the internet, you still have to verify what it is that you find, but they have gone from almost whimsical how bad they were to you got to look at it sometimes and go, this just saved me 4 hours.
So what kind of instructions do you give it then to get those types of results that are, because you talked about using it carefully. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, there's two really simple rules to follow when you're going to. One is the information generally available on the internet? These, for the most part, these tools only know what it is they find on the internet.
Okay.
So if you're asking a question that isn't likely to be found on the public internet, it's a bad question.
Yeah.
The other one is it a language kind of question? Is it a question that's about manipulating, massaging, understanding, summarizing words? Is it a language? Because these are called large language models.
Right.
So they are really good at manipulating words.
Yeah.
So if you ask a question that the answer is out there and it's about words, it's a really good candidate. You still have to practice and test and verify. But
Yeah.
if you stick to those very simple guardrails, you'll probably be okay now.
Wow, that is so exciting.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear that. All right, so give me another one. What are some of the other things that you guys are really, he's handing it off to you now. You're on next. So give
Got
me
easy one?
Yeah.
give me some other things that you're super excited about. That is something that is just been really blowing your socks off.
Being able to work collaboratively. A lot of these tools, you feel like a lot of genealogy is work you do alone, but it's becoming much easier to work on group projects, and that's really nice. Where, for example, if it's easy to imagine a genealogical society taking on a project. Maybe they've taken a photograph of every tombstone in a cemetery. Now you could collaborate on these projects and share your results and build the AI tools that help you for these projects. Being able to work together.
How do you do that? Like, what does that look like? Can you explain that a little bit better?
One of them is by Google. And if you've ever worked in Google Docs, is familiar to folks, and those are collaborative. So imagine a place where you have your Google Docs, but you could also put audio and video and images, and you could, in that one, it's as if you had your own file cabinet that you were sharing with others, but there was also an artificial intelligence in that little study room at the library just for you, with your documents, records, images, audio, and you've got a little special AI tool that you and your society are working on together on the project. At Google, this is called Notebook LM.
Okay.
And it does a lot of cool stuff. But
So if you just search Notebook LM, you'll be able to find it.
oh yeah,
Yay.
it burst into public consciousness not because it was collaborative, but it's the one that allowed people to create their own podcast, which was a little bit nervous for us. But you could ask the artificial intelligence a question, and it would generate a response, and then it would turn that long response into an audio dialogue. You would literally hear a man and a woman talking back and forth, and it sounded like a super engaging podcast. The example everybody used was you could give it a PDF file. Say you had a 20-page document about some subject, the history of the county that you're interested in, and you found an old PDF file about that. You give it to Notebook LM, and it turns that 20-page document into an engaging podcast. And it blew people away.
Wow.
It's just so good. Yeah. I don't think it's going to put any podcasters out of business. Maybe, I hope not, knock on wood. But it did that, and having the collaborative space where you can do it with other folks.
Oh, wow. That's so exciting. All right, I need one more. What's one more thing you guys are really, really excited about that's fairly recent?
Well, probably the most exciting new development that's going on right now is the ability to do a thing called reasoning.
Okay.
And it's literally right at the very, very cutting edge right now. And again, one of those things that's been being released literally in the last few weeks.
Okay.
And it's when you see it happen, it doesn't actually even seem real. When you ask a question that has a complicated path for the answer, with something that even a human would reason through. It's not like, tell me the answer to the question, it's what's the right way to figure out the answer to this question?
Okay.
For example, I want to build a research plan. You bring together a whole bunch of different facts. You've got the history of your family, you've got the history of your county, you've got some migration paths, you've got some DNA evidence. You don't just sit down and write it from front to back. You look at it in several different passes and think about the best way to work through it. These reasoning models are designed to do exactly that. They take the time to think, not for 10 seconds or 15 seconds, but for like a minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes. They'll go away, scrub through several times through the question that you asked them, and come back with an answer that they've thought through a couple of different ways and picked, and the AI picks what it thinks is the best answer to the question from several that it considered. And even more interestingly, it shows you the reasoning that it went through to conclude to it. So you can learn not just from the answer that it gives you, but from the path that it used to get to the answer. It looks completely like Star Trek.
Wow, that is so exciting.
For the end user, the person using this, they won't be so excited perhaps about this is a reasoning model, isn't this exciting?
Yeah.
The results are better. They're just going to notice that this is better than it used to be. And what's different is the earliest versions of the chat bots, they would paint themselves into a corner or just walk off a cliff. They were just putting one word after another to build the response.
Yeah.
But now they rethink. It reviews its answer before it gives it to you. So it really is thinking before it speaks. And so the quality of your responses are much better, because if the AI realizes that it just said something foolish, it's actually reasoning out, oh, that was not a good answer, let me try this again. And I do that all the time. I start a sentence and then back up all the time. Now these tools are kind of doing the same thing, and it's mostly baked in to the AI. So users don't have to do a lot. If they know they're using one of these reasoning models that they call it, they just get the better answer.
Now, before, I know a long time ago, or maybe a long time ago, last year, a long time ago in the AI world.
It seems like forever.
It's serious. When you and I talked, you said you really needed to put money in to like Chat GPT in order to get good results. But I've been hearing that's not the case anymore, that the free stuff is really, really great.
Yeah, there's been some really big competitive changes in the last year.
Okay.
A year ago, it was like a 1 or 2 horse race. Now there's 5 or 6 horses in the race, and they're all vying for position. So that, competitive pressure is a good thing, and it's really driven the cost down. There used to be some models you could only get as a paying customer, and some the less capable models you would get as a free user. Now what they're doing is even the strongest models, almost the very strongest models available, you can still have access to, but only for a very limited amount. Like these reasoning models are incredibly expensive to run. Like when they go away for 10 minutes, boy, the hamster wheels are spinning in the server room.
Right.
So they're really, really expensive. So as a free user, you might get one a month, literally a month.
Okay.
And as a highest paid tier user, you might get 200. And then there's everything in the middle.
Okay.
But the best news for everybody who's doing genealogy is you can get incredible capabilities in all of these models now at the free tier, just not as often as you would at a paid tier.
That's really good to know.
Yes, you can try it. That's
Yeah,
the thing, is because
that's the great
people are
thing.
intimidated. They want to flip for the $20 or $200 a month
Right.
to try out this stuff, so they can give it a trial and go, wow, this is actually pretty interesting. I do want to do this more often, and so they can kind of get across that line. We're even actually seeing something we've been talking about was likely coming for over a year now, is now the big tech companies like Microsoft and Google, they're building basic AI capabilities into all of their tools. The entire productivity suite, Microsoft Office and Google Workspace, there's a little bit of AI pixie dust now sprinkled
On
everywhere.
everything. I mean, I'm seeing it like on my web hosting platform. I'm seeing it, yes, I see what you're talking about.
So
Absolutely.
we're not going to be able to, correction, we don't have to choose to go out and hunt it down and pay for it anymore. There's so much value in these tools. Even FamilySearch, full text search, it's built into the platform.
Right.
We're going to see this trend. There's going to be better and better standalone chatbot tools, and there's also going to be AI capability built into the tools that we use every day.
Okay. I just love that. All right, so we kind of talked about the 3 big things that are, latest, greatest. What do you think are the 3, let's do 3s today, because there's 3 of us, that works. What do you think are the 3 best tools for a genealogist to be using now? What are the best ways for them to utilize Chat AI in their research? I mean, some of this stuff is like breaking, and I'm sure that some of that stuff filters in, but I think sometimes some people, we get a little, this is me, maybe I'm thinking about me and maybe y'all are different, but I get a little overwhelmed. You know what I mean? Like the capabilities, it's like I don't have time for all of this. So like if I were to narrow it down and say, this is what I really want to focus on because it's going to make the most difference in my research, what would you say those 3 things are?
Summarization, extraction, and different ways these tools can transform text or language. And so we'll talk about the 3 of those. Summarization is how you take a lot of something and you condense it into something valuable and smaller and useful. The analogy I like is this is how you turn coal into a diamond. And these tools, they're not perfect, but neither are people. If I were to hand a 20-page probate file and say, give me the 2-page executive summary of this 20-page probate file, and gave that task to 5 professional genealogists, they would come back with 5 different results of varying quality, but all probably pretty good quality or great quality. The AI is the same. It can take a 20-page probate file and turn that into a 2-page summary in seconds. And that's a very strong
helpful.
use of this technology. As Mark mentioned, if it's manipulating language, it's going to have a better chance of doing something good rather than physics or mathematics, although that may not be true for much longer. Extraction or transformation?
I do transformation a lot. So you can think about it like translation, but not just translation from language to language like we normally think about translation. Yeah. It's taking the way that the words are presented and putting them in a way that makes more sense to us. And the most genealogically useful example that I do all the time is you take an old record that's written in a different style of language, or a technical record like a land record or a deed or a probate, where there's some language in there that you literally don't understand.
Or a legal case.
Or a legal case, perfect.
The court cases for me are the ones that I'm just, because the laws have changed so much, and I sometimes it's really difficult for me to figure out, what are they really saying here?
Exactly, and these tools are very, very good. That's just a form of translation. They can take a look at those words, and the prompt is basically take these and explain them to me like I'm somebody who doesn't know anything about law, or who doesn't know anything about land records, who doesn't know anything about deeds, Or you can take something that's very technical and turn it down and say, explain that to me like I'm somebody in grade 5.
Yeah.
And that is incredibly useful for kind of cracking through that barrier of understanding.
Yes.
Like some people get hung up on the transcription, and then some people get hung up on the translation, and then some people get hung up on, they've got the words staring at them, and they're words in English, and I still don't understand them.
Yes.
Every one of those, there is some opportunity for assistance in there.
Well, and I love that too, because I found that as I do additional research and find out a little bit more about the laws at the time or what this word really means, all of a sudden it opens the record up to much more information to me than I initially assumed. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I've used that with medical stuff. I got a medical test back and it was like, I have no idea what that's in that test. And I threw it into Chat GPT and said, put this in layman's terms. And, okay, now I understand.
Even though you can read the word,
yes,
you still don't understand the word because it's technical or you don't understand the context.
Yeah.
And I'll literally go, in the context of an 1800s era French record from the Drouin collection about marriage, what does this word mean? All of those little bits of context.
Yes.
It's kind of like lighting up the pathway into the AI neural network and saying, look through here, connect all of these lines together, and tell me what you find. That's probably the most important skill. Like people throw out a lot of really kind of $1,000 words when they talk about AI, and sometimes we're the worst, so apologies everyone. But you can just think about so much of prompting is just setting the context before you make your request.
And I think that's where a lot of people make a mistake, don't you think?
They don't set the context.
They don't set the context.
Yeah.
So when we're setting context, we need to be very clear about the time period that we're discussing it. And what are the recommendations do you have in setting the context?
There's a couple of great ones. There's the time period. There's your own knowledge level.
Okay.
There's the knowledge level that you want the AI to put itself into and think about.
Okay.
The part of the world maybe that the record is from,
okay,
the time period, the language, the record set. All of these are like little lamp posts along the path to find your way through the darkness. And you want to separate the things that you're looking for from the things that you don't want the AI to consider.
Yeah.
And that's how we end up with a hallucination, is either the information's not there or you didn't give enough context so that your context and the AI's context were in the same place.
Okay, so you gave me an example in the very beginning of, you said it fairly quickly. So would you phrase something again in the correct context for a record? Because I really think that's going to be really valuable for these guys.
It takes you to the next level.
Yeah.
And to give the context for the context. The analogy that I love, the analogy I love is Bob Ross, the guy who taught painting on public television. He would, when he was teaching folks how to paint a painting, he would start with the background and he would paint the whole canvas.
Right.
That's what we're doing when we talk about setting the
Yes,
context for
yeah.
a language model, because these language models, they're the most sophisticated computers humanity's ever built, but they still have relatively small short-term memories
Yeah.
or context windows.
Yeah.
And so many folks mistakenly imagine that these tools have all the world's knowledge permanently memorized, and they don't. They're continuing a sentence you began. That's your prompt, by putting one word after another. You could give it, as to continue Mark's example of a legal case from, let's say, the 1800s, you could just give it the 20-page legal case and say, summarize this,
Right.
and you'd get a solid result. But there's a better way.
All right, show us. Tell us.
You give it more context, or you ask it for more context.
Okay.
You're trying to put information into the AI's short-term memory, into the context window. And you may say, refresh my memory, what are the 5 points of the genealogical proof standard? And suddenly the model is going to remember how to do good genealogy. Then you could ask it, assume you're a professor of law. What are the major differences between modern law and 18th century law in Virginia? And it's going to give you a little bit of that. So now in the model's short-term memory, it knows genealogy and a little bit more about 18th century Virginia
okay.
legal theory.
And so these are all follow-up questions,
No,
right?
those are the preparation. That's the preparation.
No, but what I mean though is, so like for the layman like me, you're in your, like I'll use Chat GPT as an example, but I know that there's so many of them out there.
Yes.
So like you're in Chat GPT and you say, what are the 5 points of
Yes.
that?
Yes.
And then you follow it up within the same stream with
Yes.
the lawyer
Yes.
question. Okay.
Then you
so
give
then
it
what
your
do you
case.
do?
Then you give it
Gotcha.
your case.
Okay.
And now, because it's thinking foremost in its mind, those are figurative terms.
Yeah.
I know I'm a genealogist. I know something now about legal theory in Virginia in the 1800s. Now you give it the case and you say, now summarize this and tell me everything interesting about this case. And if you were to compare that summary to the one where you just said summarize this, it's gonna go from a B+ to an A- or a solid A.
Okay. That's great. That's great to know. All right. What's the third one? What's
The
your
third one,
your last one?
This, we probably should have started with this. It's a bit easier. Extraction. This is how you pull gold needles out of a haystack. And my classic example is extracting information from a will. You would phrase that, your prompt could be pretty simply, find attached this will. Extract, create a table of information contained in this will. The first column, name everybody who's mentioned that is inheriting something. In the second column, list their relationship, because the will often say my
Yes.
granddaughter.
Right.
And then the third column is, what did you inherit? And then the fourth column, you could say, include the exact sentence from the will that leads you to believe that Bob inherited the car from Jill.
Okay.
And that helps you with your verification. And everything
That's
these
true.
models
That's
do,
nice.
you have to verify.
Yeah.
You don't assume it's true just because it spit the answer back.
It can simplify your world, but it's not going to solve all your problems for you.
There's time on the back end verifying these things.
Okay.
And if you're doing serious genealogy, you take the time to verify your chatbot.
Oh, you guys, you are the best. So listen to their podcast, because they get way into more fun things that I probably can't even begin to understand, I'll be honest. But you have been so helpful to the genealogical community. And if you didn't know, Steve is the National Genealogical Society's AI Director. Is that the title?
AI Program Director.
Program Director. And so he's helping us all do that. And this podcast you guys have created together is just fantastic. So thank you both so much for being with me and helping us all use AI to further our genealogy. I
Go
love
AI.
it. Woo! Thanks. Have a good day, guys.